Hafa Day Guam. I'm Adriana Cotero. You're tuning into The Greater Good, and today I am joined with two members with the Micronesian Climate Change Alliance organization. We have Muneka De Ora. Got it. And we also have Michelle Bocolo.
Perfect. Yeah.
Bocolo, and you are the president with the organization. So, just to start off, tell us when the organization started and how it came to be, if you could please.
Yeah, so the organization was started in October 2018. I was working for Micronesia Renewable Energy before, and I was selling solar panels. So while I was doing that, I was learning a lot about climate change, and I was learning about how renewable energy helps with climate change. And then shortly after, I looked into this organization called the Climate Reality Project.
Okay.
So it's led and run by Al Gore, and he goes all over the world, and he gives these climate change presentations, and they're free to go to. You just have to figure out a way to go to them. So I
dig your own way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wound up going to the one in LA in 2018, and after I went, it was really life-changing for me because I learned all about climate change and solutions, and was opened up to the fact that this global event is going on, and not enough was being done. So then I came back to Guam, and originally I was just going to start kind of a little group, and then I just took it one step further and then registered it as a nonprofit.
Wow. So before attending that event, were you always
Yeah, I was
passionate
always
about climate change, or were you just a little
Yeah.
bit interested?
I was always like an environmentalist. I always was somebody who loved nature. I always, like when I lived in South Florida, I went to beach cleanups. I was always just somebody who like volunteered and did stuff like that. I can't necessarily say that this is what I thought I would wind up doing, but I love it and I'm super passionate about it, and my life has just changed so much since starting.
So it was almost like at that point in
Yeah.
time, it was like, aha, that epiphany
Yeah.
moment, right? In life, you're like, you felt like you almost found your purpose.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Exactly. It's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Amazing. And what about for you? How did you get involved with the organization?
It was kind of very organic too, in her coming into this. I've been an activist on the island for a very long time and wanting to protect natural resources and the land and protect our oceans, and also working towards the decolonization of our islands. I do a lot of cultural work and really just feel really grounded, not only in Guam, but throughout the rest of the Marianas, having spent a lot of time throughout the forests and with the communities of, and with the people who do work in the ocean and cultural practitioners on all of our islands, just really grounded in the sense of who I am and the place that I come from, and really just in awe and reverence of our islands all the time. So when anyone has any events to uplift our islands and uplift the challenges that we're facing, whether it be from the military or from development or from climate change, I definitely want to know more about who's involved and how to become more supportive of that group. So they had one of their first protests just in September of last year, I think.
It was August.
August of last year.
2019?
2019.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I just wanted to attend to support it because I was really and I've been following MCCA on social media and was really a big fan of the narrative that they were sharing about climate change and how it's not just about recycling, even though that's a big portion, and it's not. There's all these bigger systemic reasons why we're experiencing the climate crisis, and MCCA was onto that narrative. Was onto the narrative that all these oppressive systems kind of play into why the whole world is pretty much in crisis mode right now, and giving it the local Marianas, Guam, Micronesia lens as to what it looks like here, both the oppression and then what the solutions out of it are something that is really strong on the social media at Micronesia Climate Change. Follow us. So I never knew who Michelle was, but was a big fan of the page. Was always sharing their stories and always sharing the work that she was producing for the social media. So when I finally met her, one of the first things I said to her was like, "What's your vision for MCCA? What do you want to do with this? Do you want to employ people?" And she's like, "Oh, right now it's basically just me and a few other volunteers." And then not even a few months later, I get we've come into the opportunity where I can be a full-time employee helping to build the organization like after only a year of its
I was
existence.
gonna say, so it's only been around since 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now you're already employing people. What else has happened within the few years?
We recently just got our 501c3
Okay.
status, which is when the IRS recognizes you as a nonprofit and you can take charitable contributions. So it was really tough when we weren't 501c3 because it's hard to get donations and funding and grant money and whatnot. So I had partnered up with this organization that's mostly stateside based called Climate Justice Alliance.
Okay.
They partner up and work with frontline communities all over the United States and United States territories. So I partnered with them to capacity build and to have them, help me with funding and whatnot. And so what happened was they offer all these different kinds of opportunities, grant opportunities. That's how we were able to hire Muñeca through a grant that we were awarded through them. They also offered to have a delegate go to Madrid to represent in the Conference of the Parties climate talks. So Muñeca was able to go to Madrid for 2 weeks and participate in that.
Yeah, which was life-changing. And the CJA also sponsored Phil Cruz, another member of our organization, to go to the climate strikes in New York City that were also happening around the world at the same time. So Phil was able to participate in that and also connect to people who are doing on-the-ground work, activists and climate justice workers throughout the United States. And it's just been a really beautiful and an empowering experience, just coming into MCCA and then going to the global national and global platform to see all these different people coming together and really trying to be the solutionaries, bring the solutions, because all we hear in the media so often is the challenges, the wildfires, the storms, the all the animals that are dying. So it's a really bleak narrative that's being shared in the world, and you don't really get to see the stories of empowerment, the stories of communities rising up and helping one another, the stories of people at the front lines who are able to stop destructive practices on their lands, like for pipeline or fracking, and to come into contact with those real people doing real work has been so inspiring and so reaffirming.
Seeing everyone join forces. So tell me about the Madrid trip and how it was life-changing for you.
Oh gosh, so it was I didn't even know I was going to be going to Madrid 2 weeks prior. It happened all so quickly in just the lead up.
That's when it's the best, right? The unknown, and then it just happens like,
So originally the conference, it happens every year. It's an annual conference. It's the UN FCCC is what it's known as, and it's the Paris Agreement, which is about the climate talks, and the Kyoto protocols all came out of these different talks that have been happening every year for the last 20 years. And it's the global summit where people come together from civil society, from governance, to come together to really map out what is our way out of how are we addressing climate change. And so this year it was originally slated to be in Chile, and because of social unrest in Chile and the
feminist uprising, the feminist movements.
Yes, and
they had to relocate it.
They had to, the president of Chile wasn't comfortable bringing all this international eyes on the ground there, so it was moved within 6 weeks to Madrid. So it was really interesting to see how Madrid was able to really quickly put this all together, because this is a huge conference. 27,000 people from around the world attended, and every country puts up their best foot, and they really they create these booths. Showing what they're doing, having presentations and planning and gathering, and there's 1,000 things happening at one time, and it's huge. It's a huge space. But I went with a delegation called It Takes Roots, which is an alliance of really amazing organizers throughout the world. It Takes Roots is made up of the Indigenous Environmental Network, which does a lot of work throughout Turtle Island, what is known as Turtle Island, which is North and South America, and it's from the indigenous perspective, and they were the heads of our delegation for It Takes Roots. And there's the Climate Justice Alliance, which is what I was brought on for, and who sponsored our trip. Global Grassroots Justice was also with us, and then Rights for the City, people who protect gentrification or protect communities that are experiencing gentrification in urban areas. So coming with our delegation was only about 30 members, and they were so organized that they planned actions. They knew exactly which were the talks that we should go to within the official UN spaces, but also making sure that we had voice at the outside spaces that have been created. Because COP is very formal, it's very top heavy in the priorities for the talks. There's been people from civil society, people from nonprofits, people from groups around the world who have come together in previous COPs to plan conferences outside where they could just deepen their relationships and deepen their strengthening their community work that they do together across the world. So we ensured that we were at the ones in Madrid, which was called the Cumbre Social. And that was really amazing to just be in conversations and listen to presentations from people from the Amazon, people from Africa, people from Asia, and really be in spaces that were global but felt so very relational.
Right.
It's the same issues. It's colonization that has been infecting them. It's capitalistic development pressures that are really hurting their community. So it was very. I could see and felt their struggle because I see those things happening here and have been learning and trying to make other people around me understand those pressures on our lands and on our environment
So
here.
what was the biggest takeaway? I'm sure there was many, but if you could just pinpoint one big one just to...
I think, I just want to say really quick
Of
that
course.
I think it's important to remember that in these spaces, Guam doesn't really have a seat because we're under the United States, so it's the United States leading it. Last year, the United States at this, at the Conference of the Parties to discuss climate change, held a little, side show about the benefits of fossil fuels and whatnot, because as we know, the president has been outright and very outspoken about his beliefs on climate change, not believing them. So I think that it was just a huge deal in general.
So was it almost also, in a sense, a little bit challenging, and then you had to overcome adversity with that?
Well, I think also a big thing for me, and it was a huge honor, is that because Guam's never at these this is 25 years, and this was the 25th one, and I'm not aware. There might have been someone from Guam who attended these conferences. There was one other girl in another delegation who was part of the Chamorro diaspora who went, but for the most part, our experiences in Micronesia, especially within the Marianas, the context of the Marianas, because we're the U.S. territory, are not shared in those spaces. So the fact that we experience all these storms and droughts and are very, very vulnerable to climate change, but aren't connected because we oftentimes feel so isolated, aren't connected to the larger picture, to the global picture. It was really life affirming for me to share our people's story and our land story and our struggles, and understand the interconnectedness of all of our struggles, and also the interconnectedness of the pathways out of this, the pathways towards our liberation, the pathways towards peace for all of our peoples. So I mean, there was just so many moments, so many beautiful people, beautiful work being done that was very empowering, that made me really recommitted to coming back home and really doing such strong work here. The women was a huge, huge takeaway. The Amazonian women, the women all over Asia, the women, the indigenous women of North America and South North America, and the way that they come together under the most excruciating odds, under threats of violence, under their basically their livelihoods at stake, coming no matter what because they love their land so much, was really so awe-inspiring for me to see them be so strong, even in the face of all that danger. So we're actually planning a women's event, and it's largely like me wanting to bring that energy back from that conference and share that and continue to create that here on our island, to bring that sort of awareness that women all over the world need each other now more than ever, and and Mother Earth needs us now more than ever to unite and be empowered.
And also the difference one's voice can make.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about the event coming up this Saturday.
Okay.
The women's. Tell me where it is, when it is, and how that came to be. I mean, you mentioned bringing that energy back, so.
It's this Saturday. We're going to begin at 3:30, and we're going to be rallying at Paseo. We're going to march. We're going to start an opening with a little meditation, healing circle. And then around 4 o'clock, we're going to start marching. We're going to march from Paseo to Lupang at the
the Women of the
yeah.
Islands Three
Statue.
Generations statue. We felt that that's a poignant place to end our march. And that was the same march route that we did in 2017 when it was the very first march, and it was the very first march after the election of Trump that really motivated people throughout, mostly women throughout the United States to be doing this march. And every year there's been this march, and it's turned into a global march on this third Saturday of every January. And we haven't done one since 2017, so this is 2020. We're wanting to come back with a bang and really encourage all women and men too, anyone who really believes in protecting women's rights and protecting the rights of Mother Earth, and really ending violence. It's also the same day as the human trafficking and sexual abuse Awareness Day. So bringing that same struggle in and uplifting those people who suffer through those things is also really important to us. But yeah, we are encouraging people to come at 3, to wear red, to also learn this song that's being done throughout the world. It started in Chile actually, and it's an anti-rape song, and you can look it up. But people throughout in Berlin, in India, everywhere around the world, women are coming together to call attention to the perpetrators of violence against women, and to let other women know that we're there for one another, and this needs to stop, and it needs to stop now. From a systemic level to all the way from the government to our families, we need to stop the violence against women. So that's the major catalyst for us to bring us all together.
We've been doing a donation for Vero, victim advocates reaching out. We've been doing that since December, and so we're gonna continue it during the march. So we're asking people if they can bring little toiletries for donation. We're not accepting any clothing items, just mostly like little makeup bags, little shampoos, conditioners, and then we're gonna be handing that over to Vero after the march. Yeah.
And Vero gives these to women in need when they're in under circumstances where they need help immediately. So it's like a care package that they would give to their clients when they come in.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to go back to, you mentioned that it was one of the first protests that you just had in, was it August?
Oh,
In
yeah.
August, yeah.
So, what was that like? Did a lot of people come out? Were you surprised, or and what were you protesting against?
So that protest
It was more like a demonstration.
it was more like, I guess, a demonstration. Or we called it call to action. You know? But basically, yeah, it was a protest. So we were protesting at the time. We wanted GU'd to come up with some sort of climate resiliency plan. At the time we didn't have one. There wasn't one being worked on. All these other, countries and places have declared climate emergencies, and they've been implementing these climate resiliency plans, or at least like doing things to make their cities and islands or states more livable and more resilient. So we were advocating for that. A couple weeks after, I think about 50, 60 people showed up, some senators showed up. Yeah, it was pretty good. It was more than I thought, were going to show up. I was like, the night before sweating and couldn't sleep, and I was just so worried that it was just going to be
so
like
how did
me.
you feel seeing everyone come together and also want to voice the same?
Yeah, I was shocked and I was super happy, and then I think it was a week or two later the Climate Change Resiliency Commission was created, and
your voice matters, everyone. I say it all the time. You see, you can make differences.
That's what I'm saying, and I always told people, like, look, I have no idea if that was because of our protest or not, but regardless, that's what we wanted. It was created. Now we sit on that board. So
and all these awesome changes have come through afterwards. And so that was in August, and then September we had our second action, which was the global climate strike.
And I think 100 people showed up to that.
Yeah, so we're slowly growing, and we'll see. This is our third action with this Women March, so we're hoping to just gain this momentum and
I'm
continue
so excited to hear about it.
Continue to build in our community and build people out and have people going out to our streets. We have young people. We have young 8th graders coming to us saying, like, we want to start the Fridays for Future. The Futures for Fridays for Micronesia, and so that's something that we hope to be building over the course of the next few weeks. And the Fridays for Future was started by Greta Thunberg, who's turned into an international icon, and one of the faces of climate change. And as a young person, they have the most at stake. So to have young kids here coming to us, and like, how do we do this?
And that's brave, especially like where we are, I mean, we're on a tiny island, everybody knows everybody, so I think a lot of people are afraid to step up and are afraid to speak out against things like that. So it is so, so brave that these little, these young kids are coming and stepping up and wanting to be a part of this.
And they're going to be speaking at our event too, so just like, I don't even, we were talking to them yesterday, just helping them to craft their messaging. They're going to be speaking specifically to the environment and the future that they want and how they feel that we should move towards that. But to just empower these young girls and to see that the power that they have there.
I know.
I was like, do you guys feel comfortable?
Yeah.
Even in an interview once, I was like, oh my God, you're gonna make me cry. Like, I'm just so happy. Like, oh, it's so beautiful, right? It's something so beautiful to see.
Like Gen Z, who I think is this new generation, I think they're like the best so far, right? I mean, they're so much better than
as much as we don't want to admit it, I know. Even like my little sister, sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, I'm scared of what you're gonna become, but I'm so excited for it.
So up to date on the news and like politics.
Yeah, they're in tune,
yeah,
and it's
really
amazing.
are.
But honestly, bravo.
Yeah.
I know. Thank you.
Yes, Marcus is clapping back there too.
So if anyone's interested in the Micronesian Youth Climate Strike, is that
Which you guys just had an event too with the youth, right?
We partnered up with the University of Guam Center for Island Sustainability, and we held a little workshop activity for
WAVE students.
Yeah, for WAVE students.
So this is a club that's in all the elementary schools. So they came to University of Guam CIS, and we partnered with them to give them different workshop experiences on the campus of what environmentalism is, what's the importance of the ocean, what's the importance of our land, and what's the importance
renewable energy.
And
we made
and
cookies in a solar oven.
Yeah, it was so much fun. So this work has been really invigorating because sometimes, a lot of the times, I've been an activist for so long on our island. It's very thankless. It's very people experience burnout because you're giving so much and there's so much opposition even from your own family. There's opposition to the things that you're doing. But when it comes to like doing youth work, it's so much easier to just start the conversation on why things are, what is important and why it's important and why it's important for us to act for it. And continuing to do that is definitely a priority for Micronesian Climate Change Alliance.
Yeah, for sure. I like talking to kids more than adults.
So, let's just highlight about the urgency to act now, especially with, we're in the state of a climate crisis. We see all these fires in Australia, and maybe you guys can shed a little bit more light on, effects of climate change.
Well, 2018 was I think the hottest year on Earth ever, as our planet is warming, as weather patterns are shifting and whatnot, we're seeing more tragic events like this. What's happening in Australia, as far as I know, chime in if you know anything different, was just that it was they're just going through a drought, it's super hot, it's super dry. I mean, LA is like kind of the same. It's like there is
top fires just
last year.
Exactly. And it's not sometimes like one thing that starts it. It could just be, it's just like dry and all of a sudden
so I'm from Michigan, and I remember that was one of the coldest winters they had too. They had a polar vortex going through the entire Midwest, and I was like talking to my family members, and they're like, we honestly cannot even go outside. Like everything is just ice, and everything is just shut down. But so we are seeing effects everywhere, all over the world.
And it's not just, as you know, it doesn't just mean like hotter weather, or it's stuff like that, the polar vortex.
Yeah, and for here in Oceania, we are extremely vulnerable to any impacts of, if the temperature rises above 1.5 degrees Celsius in the next it's slated to rise to that in the next few years. It's the party music. It's
a lot of things going on in our KUM communications right now.
We're at risk of a lot of continuous storms. Were you in Saipan during Typhoon Yutu?
I was there during it.
Yeah, so we're at risk to larger storms happening and continuing to happen, and also developing so quickly. I was in Saipan just in October when they had that one storm that was just a tropical storm and then developed into a super typhoon within 24 hours. Yep. And thankfully it didn't hit Saipan directly, but those types of weather conditions are definitely something that we need to be building more resilience towards, because that's going to be happening. We also have drought conditions that have been affecting our islands more so in the last 10 years than ever. Last year too, 2019, was the day we had more days over 90 degrees on Guam than ever recorded before. So conditions are going to be hotter, and then we have the threat of sea level rise that are it's going to be affecting our coastal areas, not only in the Marianas, but more so in more vulnerable atolls throughout Micronesia, which may create climate refugees. And of course, being the hub of Micronesia, we will likely have an influx of people coming in because their lands are underwater. So we have a lot that we need to rise up to address here, and we really need to do that together. And one thing I learned from COP is that it's really and also with the fires in Australia, if you uplift the people, the First Peoples, the Indigenous peoples' knowledge around their lands and how to survive and how to thrive in those lands, then you'll be a lot more resilient as the challenges come.
I just read online this morning that they were using in Australia an indigenous Aboriginal technique to put out the fires. So they are, I know, but that is a huge, I think, important conversation of the climate talks, is to utilize ancient knowledge, right? Yeah.
Especially here, like if there is a global climate catastrophe, or something happens and we don't have access to the ships coming in to bringing us our food anymore, and all the things that we import, like it's really important for us to start developing and knowing exactly where our food comes from. Food sovereignty is so critical to the survival of our
energy sovereignty,
energy and food sovereignty, and making all these moves from even just your family to the village level.
Even people just taking the initial first step, if it, you know, not using a straw or not using plastic bags, can make the biggest difference.
Yeah, and I think people don't realize that because they just feel like they're only one person, but it's like you feel that way and so do 10 million other people, you know? So if we can just shift our habits a little bit.
So I recently got back from a trip in Palau, and I was astonished by their sustainability. And you know what, before initially going there, I had no idea. I really didn't know too much about it. I was just like, I want to go to Jellyfish Lake and, you know, also see the blue water. But then I was there and I was like, wow, I was like, this island is beautiful. They don't use any plastic bags. And I told them right when I got off the plane, I was like, why is it so clean? Like, it's so clean. They're like, because we care about our land. And I was like, wow.
I was just with an elder from Palau on my way over here, and she just said the most beautiful thing to me. And one of the things that they teach their children, and it's like a conversation that you have with your land, and it's basically, you are my land, you are my sea, you are my home. I hope to be as beautiful and as giving as you are, as you have been to me. And that's just such a beautiful concept of responsibility and stewardship. And something that we here hope to cultivate more, because that's inherently in us too. But we often forget because our priorities have changed and shifted with cultural influences from elsewhere.
For sure.
But really coming back into that space of your experience of going to Palau.
Oh my
really
gosh, and you know, I'm from Michigan, like I mentioned, so even whenever I was snorkeling, I was like, oh my god, this coral's so bright. I was freaking out because from here I've only seen like white coral, and then as well, and when I was living in Saipan, same thing. And so I was like, this is like bright orange and electrifying blue. I was like all of my feels about it, but I was so excited. And I had never seen anything like that in my entire life, and I was like, wow, it was amazing.
Yeah, they really take care of their island over there. And they have, like, didn't they ban sunscreen too?
They just banned sunscreen.
And plastic bags.
They definitely can be a huge model for us, and I think it's important for more of our leaders and more of our people to just continuously go not only to Palau but to our other islands and really just connect and see the way that other things are, because here on Guam we are so Guam-centric sometimes, and we forget that we're part of an archipelago, that we're part of a larger region called Micronesia, and it's really important for us to also realize our responsibility of being like the economic hub, and also taking that responsibility to spread and be more connected to each other in a way that's really genuine, like just going and experiencing the other lands and the other cultures, and uplifting that here and not admonishing people because they're not from here or because any perceived biases that we may have.
No, I mean, honestly, before moving to the islands, I didn't know too much. And I hate that. I hate saying it out loud, but I always am like, excuse my ignorance. But, you know, I lived in Michigan, so it's not until I actually got here that I noticed the effects that it has, you know? And I'm like, I see someone littering, I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I get really upset, and I love that it's come to me and that I experienced that here. So just for those that haven't yet had this eye-opening experience, how can you almost encourage them to join in on these initiatives?
Well, if you're interested in joining MCCA, we have monthly meetings, and we're going to be rolling out so many campaigns, and we're kind of really ambitious of the things that we want to do, but we need to. Like, this is work that needs to be happening, whether it be cleanups or attending public hearings on policies that adversely affect our island's energy sovereignty, or following us on our Facebook, and really just learning more about the issue. There's so many resources out there, and it really, our mother organization, Climate Justice Alliance, is really setting out a beautiful layout of a future, because a lot of the times people are so bogged down by the bleakness of the situation, by what's being funneled through the media, and we don't see that there's hope. And there is hope, and it's in people coming together. It's in people realizing our own power and speaking to and being the agents of change that we need to be, whether it be like stopping using plastic bags and stopping using plastic bottles, and just being more plastic conscious and being more food conscious of the food that you're putting in your body. Those are like simple everyday things you could do, but coming together and analyzing and understanding who you are, where we are, and where we are here, and how we could do things here is important. And MCCA does just follow us on our social media to find out more how you can be involved.
And there's that walk this weekend too,
Yes.
of course. So that could be the first step.
Yes.
All right. Well, anything else you'd like to add before we?
Oh, I definitely want to do a shout out to all the sister organizations that are coming together to support our march. Our march again is January 18th. That's this Saturday. It's starting at Paseo at 3:30. We are connected with the Ihagan Familao Guahan, the Guam Bureau Women's Bureau, Island Girl Power, Magahaga Rising, Sustainable Sisters, Magmata Tribe, Synergy Studios, Vero, so many women-led, women-empowering organizations, and we're all here just to unite and empower one another to really move forward and take this year. Guam is such a great example of women coming together. We have our first female governor, and we have a super majority of women in our legislature. And me telling that to people in other places of the world when I was in Madrid was so empowering. They're like, really, you could do that? Women can get to those seats of power. I'm like, yes, we can, and that's just a starting place. We need to continue to build that momentum and empower each other.
Amen. Yes. Got it. Yes, for sure. Though, honestly, though. I feel it. So thank you. Thank you for sharing this message, and thank you all for the work that you do here on Guam for the greater good.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you.
This is Masi.
And thank you all for watching. I'm Adriana Cotero for the greater good.